Natalie, what are some of the unique kind of differences and challenges that you and your team are seeing with the convergence of oil and gas and data center development and utilities and hyperscalers and things like that? What are some of the nuances you're
Well,
seeing? And
I mean, even in PJM, you're still talking about a heavy oil and gas area up there, just as you would in Texas. So there's a lot of similarities. The main differences in the different high and so's is the truly the way they connect in and the speed to power. So the reason that ERCOT is most attractive right now is it is the most favorable to move into. But I'd be curious to hear from True. Our governor recently, we've had some interesting things happen in Texas. Our
mm,
governor recently set out a set of parameters for data center development. And I'd be interested to hear your take on that. And if you feel it's going to be amenable or restrictive or what you feel overall with his requirements.
and maybe also just give a baseline like explanation of what those that guidance meant to address for the folks that are listening.
Yeah, there's a few of them. I mean, there's some that's more administrative, like reporting of certain things of like water use and power consumption and things. I'd have to look. I believe so, but there's some specifics around the technology and what the usage is over time. The one kind of nuance there, I think, was like some of that is not typically done by the utility and PUCT because some of that sits into the Texas water,
Yeah.
environmental cube than it does there. But I'm sure they'll solve all that. But the principles were important, and it's just to really set a blueprinting direction to say, hey, like there's got to be some guide rails here because we all can't be running, all around the highway. You ever been in traffic and you're just driving and there's a stop up there in Texas, they just go all the way off the theater roads and around. Like we need to get some guide rails up here, and like if you stay in order, we'll all get there eventually, right? So it's kind of the same here. We got to have a little bit of like guide rails so that we'll all get there and let's work through these. And I think that the big one, I think the PUCT and ERCOT's been already kind of moving in that direction, which is great. So one of the guide rails was around power and flexible load, and more about the cost and how that cost is allocated, right, to
Yeah.
and paid for. And so from a
To the
load
consumer.
perspective,
Yeah.
I haven't heard one hyperscaler or any customers we work with to say we're not willing to pay our fair share. I do wish though the utilities were a little bit more found a better way to be more transparent about how costs are paid in our bills and your bill, so that the narrative's a little bit easier because it's easy to just pick on the boogeyman right now, which is you see all these the large load, but cost causation, and it is really hard to prove because I'm getting a little technical in the weeds here, but like there's a lot of shift factors and things around how the power is transformed and transferred that it's hard to really prove to say like you're responsible for this and that violation and therefore you pay this. So there's always debates around cost causation and allocation from load and generation in the grid more broadly. So that's why historically it's always been really hard to figure out like, did this generator or this load cause my bill to go up here and this? But I wish there was an easy way to do that so that we at least are not viewed as a liability to the grid, but more on the other side of the ledger, asset to the grid. And the way that we
Well,
are in, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
no, I mean that was a big thing with the mandate that the governor put out, and I was really wondering and wishing it was getting a little bit more attention because I feel like it would put some of the landowners at ease,
mhm,
right? With some of the
yeah,
narratives that are being shared. I mean, they're asking, that facilities must cover their own grid interconnection and transmission infrastructure expenses.
yeah,
They've got to add capacity to the grid. They've got to rapidly reduce power and curtail at the request in ERCOT, right? And they're wanting water to be efficient and requesting closed loop systems so more efficient piece of water. So they're doing all of the different things that we see most of the arguments on, especially like in social media or
mhm,
or in the news, right? What I'm most interested to see is in 2027, the governor's idea of how he's going to address and handle tax abatements and incentives
yeah,
for local communities, because
yeah.
he, has said he's going to
So
address that. I'm wondering what that ripple effect is going to be for some of these projects.
Yeah, there's a double-edged sword, on that last one because in some ways that allows us to naturally engage the community, and that's when I was in the soil development side. Like I've been to different various hearings related to tax abatements and for chapter 313 through 12. And that's been a value because at least, you have some way to engage because there's no statutory jurisdictional limits that require consent and zoning to make that happen, at least in Texas. I know in PGM it's different, but so that's an advantage. But I would say, at least for us, and I'm assuming for most developers, regardless of whether there is an incentive program or some pathway, we're going to engage. We're going to engage the community. We're going to engage the AHJs, the county officials and things. So we want them, just given where the environment is now, to at least have the same narrative we do, so that when someone sees us in their backyard or working this landowner, they know what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're going about it. And so in that we can be a trusted partner, irrespective of what is in place right now. But back to the load piece real quickly, though, I think, it's the thing that I'll be frank makes me always nervous, but I do think the utilities are doing a great job of it by way of the rules that they're working through in the interconnection standards, is trying to make sure that the lights don't turn off, right? Like that we don't have any flicker, a brownout, a blackout. Those are things that they're going to protect and preserve. And so a lot of what they are trying to do in terms of standardization, as well as the kind of drip feeding in the load, I believe that between now and 2032, which is where all the different megawatts are going to be pulled into for every year for all of the different 400 gigawatts of load requests, which I believe will probably be about 100. That's just my thinking when we hear next month.
Agreed.
What you ask for and what you get is different.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that most of that's going to be all the base load or all the stuff that's like really known that's not going to trip the required upgrades is all going to be like in 2028, 2027, 2028, and 2029. And then the rest is going to be 2030. So it'll give them time. It'll give us time to first bring down the costs, as you can know. Like if you may have heard that, if you have an existing highway or your existing grid infrastructure, you add more to it. You have more megawatt hours that you can socialize the cost around. So that actually lowers the overall cost of bills. I think that will be the case, and I hope that will be the case here in the first 2 to 3 years. It will also give the ability for us as an industry to gain trust with our load, with the utility, so they know how to manipulate and work with it as they then bring on these bigger upgrades in 2030, 31, and 32. And so my hope here is that we don't lose our shirt, we don't break the grid, which I think they will find a way to manage that way in a slow ramp, while we're bringing the bridge power behind the scenes to still bring our early power to our hyperscalers, and then minimize the issues of the worst thing that could happen, which is to have a major outage. And as you can appreciate, if a major outage happens, that can just bring in all the regulators, and just like, Storm Uri and other things like that. And that just creates way more uncertainty than nothing happens. So I'm pleading with all those out there that are the smart and savvy technology folks that are working on all the things around voltage ride-throughs and other provision and software to manage and mitigate some of these issues around power quality and oscillations and everything else that can happen, that they help us and help everybody, so that we don't have any of those situations occur.
Yeah.